leagues in Charlotte are. In fact, there are a couple of guys who are literally so down on it that they want the Panthers to draft Justin Fields just despite the Panther organization. Look, if you're going to spend the draft capital that Carolina spent, which was a 2, a 4, and this year's 6, to go and get your quarterback, to me, that tells me he's going to be the starter by hook or by crook, and they have to do everything they possibly can to build around him. Whereas getting a left tackle, an offensive weapon, or somebody to help bolster that up-and-coming defense, I feel like that's the best particular frame of mind and operating strategy for the Carolina Panthers. I don't understand these people who think that, because Justin Fields is sitting there at 8, you go and you have to take him. If Justin Fields is sitting there at 8, you do one of two things. You either take the best player available who's going to help Sam Darnold win football games, or you trade out of the pick and get a king's ransom so you can do more to try and help Sam Darnold. I understand that people are in their bag about Darnold coming here and they feel like that the numbers that he had with the Jets are close to reality. I don't think they are. I think that organization is completely flawed. I think it ruins quarterbacks, it ruins football players, it ruins careers. And you also had, in addition to that, a coach who I think was respectfully out of his mind when he took the job at the New York Jets and was nothing more than a deterrent to Sam Darnold's career being any good. So I feel like with Joe Brady, with Matt Rule, and with particular weapons that they could build around, including a potential franchise left tackle in Penei Sewell, or an offensive weapon that could possibly come later on, or somebody who helped that defense, I feel like those are the best ways to help Sam Darnold and the Carolina Panthers at least not only win immediately, but help resurrect his career.
I just think, and I completely agree with what you're saying. You and I are on the same boat, but the GM puts out the statement on the website that it doesn't take anything out of the draft. It doesn't take us out of taking a quarterback. Now, he could be saying, all right, we're going to maybe draft a guy later on, but just feeding the fan base that, I mean, it just doesn't really compute. It's one of the things that I read, and I was like, why in the world would he say that? It doesn't really make much sense.
I honestly think he just has to say that. I also feel like, too, it's fueling the fire for folks who feel like Justin Fields may slip beyond, the top 4 or 5 just because of the fact that there might not be the run on quarterbacks that everybody's expecting. I still completely believe that the Atlanta Falcons open business at 4. I feel like Cincinnati, if they're not in love with anybody at 5, they need to be on the phone with somebody. I wouldn't rule out Miami trading again just because even though they did everything they possibly can to move back up to 6, they're building with quantity, not quality. And even a team like Detroit, who's not going to win right away either, I feel like another team possibly moving up. Washington and New England have been looked at as 2 teams who have fancied a move up, and I wouldn't put it past either of them looking at Carolina at 8 and saying, hey, if Justin Fields is still on the board, let's go up and try and get him and give up the picks that we don't necessarily find as valuable. And we already know that New England doesn't value first-round draft picks at all, so they'll probably give up maybe multiple firsts to try and go up and get that potential pick from Carolina. To me, I do not see anything rooted in forward thinking and forward movement. I understand, and that's not to say anything bad about Justin Fields. I feel like the cheat code for this offseason for the Carolina Panthers was to upgrade Teddy Bridgewater without having to expand the number 8 pick, unless you were going to be assured getting one of those top quarterbacks, which was either Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, or Zach Wilson, or getting Deshaun Watson. Now, Fields still might actually fall to you, but I don't know how that helps your team, at least in the immediate short term.
But you see these GMs and you wonder if they're the whole where there's smoke, there's fire type thing, man, because that statement kind of threw me for a loop there. But a little bit more about the draft coming up at the end of the month. You hear the top 3 picks are going to go with the top 3 picks are going to go to quarterbacks. The Mac Jones went from, hey, at the beginning of last season, we don't know if he's going to start for Alabama, to this guy's going to be the 3rd pick in the draft if you listen to the talking heads. Do you remember a quarterback moving up the ranks that high and with just one real season of football under his belt?
I mean, I think Baker Mayfield had a similar rise when he was at Oklahoma because he went from basically being off everybody's radar to being the Heisman Trophy winner and number 1 pick in the draft. And I feel like we have to think about, where these guys are drafted in terms of where each of these organizations feel that they are. And I feel like the Jacksonville Jaguars, obviously, when you make a pick like they do with Trevor Lawrence, that's one that's a can't miss in a lot of people's eyes. Anybody else would make that pick. the Wilson pick for the Jets, it's harder to see the fits because they're going to try again at a quarterback that really, like I said before, it's an organization that ruins quarterbacks. The thing with Jones is that Jones fits the prototypical type quarterback that Kyle Shanahan has had in the past. They think he's a better version of Jimmy Garoppolo or somewhat comparable to Matt Ryan. That doesn't mean that he's going to have automatically a better career than Justin Fields or Trey Lance or any of the guys who are taken behind him. I feel like it's more situational than anything with Mac Jones, and they're buying into the hype that it is the QB and not the wide receivers. So if you look at the way a lot of people talked about Tua Tagovailoa, they were so high on him that people had Miami giving up giving up a king's ransom in their eyes to go get Deshaun Watson from the Houston Texans because they were that sold or not sold on Tua Tagovailoa because all they were saying about Tua was, oh, he was a beneficiary of all those ups in Alabama. I feel like Mac Jones is the same way. So I don't necessarily buy the hype. I feel like they could run a similar smoke screen and basically fool everybody into thinking they're going to take Mac Jones and in reaction take Justin Fields because I just don't see you using all that capital to go up and take a guy who really profiles as somebody who is maybe a quarterback who would have really fancied a lot of teams maybe 15 years ago. I don't know if Mac Jones is a prototypical 2021 quarterback because he's not the mover that Fields or Lance are. And I don't even know about the arm strength with him if it's as strong as some of the other guys we see in this draft. It's just not really a pick that is rooted in a lot of sense for me. But Kyle Shanahan likes to think that he's the system and not the players. So maybe he has something up his sleeve for Mac Jones combined with the weapons that they already have there in San Francisco.
Why is the shine fallen off of Justin Fields? I mean, it was thought that it was going to be 1 and 2 with Lawrence and Fields as far as the two quarterbacks taken off the board. And it seems like he's dropped down to 4th and maybe even 5th in some eyes.
It's paralysis by analysis. And I feel like a lot of ways, he and Trevor Lawrence have kind of been joined at the hip in terms of how they're evaluated. And even though Lawrence is probably the better pro prospect, and I feel like people talk about that in high regard, they look at Fields in a way that for some reason he failed to, I guess, supersede just from a talent perspective what Trevor Lawrence has, even though Fields got the head-to-head victory over him in the conference college football playoff. I just feel like Fields and Lawrence were always going to be kind of joined at the hip as far as how they were evaluated, and because of the fact that they think that there's at least a better option with a Wilson or Jones. I feel like, again, you really can't look at this from the standpoint of just because this guy was drafted here, it means he's automatically going to be better. I mean, Deshaun Watson, he was the same guy who fell down to 10 with Houston and had a pretty darn good career. Same thing for Mahomes in the same draft. I feel like, a lot of these guys, it all comes down to need, and there really aren't any teams with immediate quarterback needs outside the top 3. So Fields falling means another team is probably going to get a steal out of him. I'm not saying that all of a sudden you look at Fields and say, oh, if he falls down even below where the Panthers are, he's going to have a bad career. If you're a quarterback coming out of college right now, I think you'd almost rather fall because a lot of these same teams continue to pick at the top of the draft. And you know what that means? It's a symbol of their dysfunction, a symbol of how they do not know how to build their team. If he ends up with a team like the New England Patriots, I feel like Justin Fields is not going to be sad. He's going to be a Pro Bowler and potentially a stalwart for the Patriots for years to come if he ends up falling that far.
You mentioned that, and I always think back to Aaron Rodgers with Green Bay, where he fell all the way down, but look at the franchise he ended up with. So, yeah, I mean, that makes an absolute lot of sense there. Will Palasczuk from WFNZ in Charlotte joining us here on the Rundown this afternoon. I wanted to get into it with you about running backs. I think it's a cardinal sin now to draft a running back in the first round, but you've got two guys in Najee Harris and, of course, Travis Etienne from up in the upstate that are potential first-round talent, but might drop into the second round.
Yeah, and the problem is that when you think about a guy like Etienne, I always kind of figured that Etienne would have been well served to go at the end of the 2020 season, the 2019 season, not the 2020 season. I feel like, while you admire him for coming back, another year of tread off the tires, especially at a position where we know the shelf life is incredibly limited. I feel like he could have maximized his worth. And again, I know he had other goals in mind, particularly another national championship and academic goals of that nature. I just feel like he did himself a disservice, but he is going to find himself, I feel like, in a pretty good situation with some either first-round money or early second-round money, which will certainly help his bank account. But like you said, Rob, this is a position where I feel like I heard a stat earlier today where, the bust rate on wide receivers is about 21%. The next highest is running back. And I feel like so many of these running backs, you really have to get your work done early and get your work in terms of that first contract, because it's very, very hard to earn a second. And even when you do earn a second contract, it's very, very hard for you to live up to that contract. I think about all the running backs that Atlanta basically went through when it came to Devontae Freeman and Tevin Coleman, and they had to basically settle for Todd Gurley, a retread, and he did not live up to the performance either when he signed with a one-year deal for the Falcons this past offseason. We see it with a lot of guys in this league. You got to make the most of your opportunity right away, and I feel like for a guy like a Najee Harris or Travis Etienne, that's why those guys don't go in the first round, because they know that once they get into the NFL, it's like a used car. The clock is ticking. It's basically a matter of time before their usefulness is going to go by the wayside.
The crazy thing about that, you mentioned Todd Gurley being a retread. Todd Gurley is 26 years old, and we're talking about him like he's a talent from 50 years ago. You know what I mean?
He's got the knees of a 40-year-old, Rob. I mean, that's the problem.
I'm with you on that, but I'm just saying it kind of feeds into what you were talking about there with the shelf life of running backs, that it's just not there. So, we talked a little bit about the quarterbacks. If you're not drafting a quarterback, is there a player that you think has potential to in this draft to make a big splash next season?
Well, I mean, if the one guy in this draft that I feel like, if the Panthers or anybody who's not quarterback needy falls into this position, you have to take him. It's Kyle Pitts. I feel like Kyle Pitts is about as close to a biometrically formed football player as you'd want. A guy with length, a guy who can gain separation, who has speed, who has a very great catch ratio, very few flaws when it comes, if any, when it comes to Kyle Pitts. And that's a guy who I feel like, if he's beyond the sixth pick of the draft, I'd be very, very surprised. If there's another one on the defensive side of the football, it's Patrick Surtain II out of Alabama. I feel like he has benefited a lot from the injury that happened with Virginia Tech defensive back Caleb Farley. He was looked at as possibly the top corner in this draft for a lot of reasons, but he has obviously fallen back because of issues and question marks about his back. Some medical evaluations have made him look less desirable to certain teams. So I feel like Surtain is a beneficiary. And I also think South Carolina's defensive back, J.C. Horn, he tested very well at South Carolina's pro day earlier last month. And they like his speed. They like the pedigree from his dad, Joe Horn. And obviously because of the fact that he is somebody who is in a position where you really do not have a lot of guys beyond him and Farley who are going to be, potential lockdown corners in the league. It's not necessarily a strong draft for the corner position. So I feel like those two guys on defense, Surtain and Horn, and Kyle Pitts on offense, those are the guys I feel like are the big money makers for teams if you're looking for a non-quarterback in the top 10, or at least early on in this draft.
Final question for Will Palasczuk from WFNZ in Charlotte. We appreciate him joining us here on the program today. The Deshaun Watson saga, it seems like it's days of our lives. Man, in the end, it seems like they're combining all 22 cases into one major class action case. I mean, do you think Watson's going to pay everybody off, or do you think we're going to trial? If you were a Judge Palasczuk, which way do you think this is going to go?
I still feel like it's not out of the realm of possibility that he's on a football field somewhere in 2021. I've had more than a couple of people tell me that when it comes to his status, just because of the fact that a lot of these are, again, civil suits and they could be possibly settled out of court. But again, you have to be very, very careful with the way that you talk about these particular cases, because as we said, and I think I've said this to you before, Rob, there are no winners in these cases, because it's so hard to presume innocence or guilt in these scenarios, because there's a lot of ambiguity, especially when it comes down to testimony. The burden of proof is very easy to prove in a civil suit. When it comes to a criminal suit, it's a little bit more difficult. So from the standpoint of Deshaun Watson, he's probably going to take a significant hit either in the wallet or at least in the court of public opinion, and also from a PR standpoint. But I do believe that the talent from him is there, that a team is going to act shrewdly enough to at least try and get him on their roster at some point in 2021 or 2022. I don't know if he's going to play at the beginning of 2021. I feel like it's very, very likely that he ends up sometime soon on the commissioner's exempt list, which probably means at least the start of his 2021 season could be possibly kaput, and then any suspension that follows afterwards. But absent anything that comes out majorly in a criminal sense, because right now the only criminal charge that could possibly be brought on him right now would be in a misdemeanor fashion, I still feel like there's a pretty good chance he still ends up on the football field somewhere in 2022 at the very latest. But at the same time, you do have to wonder how those NFL teams will weigh the PR hit of bringing on somebody of Watson's caliber if, in fact, the legal situation goes against him in a way that could possibly sully his character.
Bill Belichick doesn't care. He'll blow that off in a nanosecond and pull the hoodie down and go. Anyway.
He's not the only one. And again, I want to be very, very careful, because the things that Deshaun Watson is accused of doing, if it's come out that they are actually true, it's sickening. It's despicable. It's nothing anybody wants to have on their football team and on their roster. And the things that he's accused of doing are objectionable in the highest order. And I want to make sure I'm clear on that. But I also feel like there's enough of the allure of the football player that a lot of these organizations might, quote unquote, look the other way in that regard. And whether you find that to be, positive or negative, I'll let you make those conclusions. But I know one thing: there are more than a couple of teams who are lurking and just making sure that if there is a way for him to come out on the other side of this in any kind of positive manner, they will not only kick the tires, they will be burning down Houston's phone, because I think we know for a fact he's played his last down of football in Houston, but I think he's far from played his last football anywhere in the National Football League.
All right, Will Palasczuk from WFNZ, bringing some logic and reason to the program. As always, I appreciate it, sir. Folks can follow you on Twitter. Where?
At Willie P. Style. It's IEP Style. We sit now basically 16 days away from the NFL draft, so we're getting ready for that. We have a big 6-hour blowout of coverage basically on the first Thursday night of the draft, and I'll be on throughout the weekend. So we're getting ready for it, and obviously keeping track on what's going on with the Hornets as well, who basically will dress, I believe, the minimum 9 tonight against the Los Angeles Lakers, because they're going to be out at least 4 or 5 guys. So yeesh. That's all I could say.
There you go with that. Hey, man, thanks for joining us on the Rundown. We appreciate it, as always.
My pleasure, Rob. Anytime.
All right, there you go. Will Palasczuk joining us from WFNZ, talking a little bit about, of course, the Carolina Panthers, the NFL draft, and where Deshaun Watson's going to go, where he'll end up. So, yeah, it's interesting stuff there. I hold in my hands, ladies and gentlemen, the first computer rankings from ESPN for the ACC and the SEC. When we get back, we're going to go over what they think each team is going to do according to their computer projections. We'll have that for you in just a moment here on The Rundown. You're listening to Fox Sports Radio 1400. You're right about that, Bama boy. I think Bill Belichick ends up with him, and I think that's what everybody's going to be complaining about. I don't think Bill Belichick cares. I don't think a lot of these teams care. And it's what Will said makes the most sense. Yes, you have to handle all of that as far as, if Watson did this stuff, it's disgusting. If you take advantage of a woman, you're not really a very good person. Let's just put that out there. But if it's just a misdemeanor charge, I mean, remember who was the guy that actually ran over somebody that was a Tennessee player and ran over somebody and he ended up getting back into the league. He actually killed someone. So yeah. The FPI is interesting stuff. You're right about that there, JW. And when I first saw this, I knew the Georgia fans were going to be upset because, I think that when you see, when we go over the FPI, that they're going to be like, oh, they need a new computer. LSU fans are upset too, by the way. Oof, man, I'm in one LSU Facebook group. And by the way, the LSU folks are top notch as far as fans go, man. They could go 0-12 and they still think they're the absolute best team ever. I mean, they're that passionate of a fan base. But man, they are upset about this FPI stuff. Oof, man, it's crazy. This is like one of my favorite parts of the season right here because I hold on to these and we look back at them at the end of the season. Welcome back to the Rundown on Fox Sports Radio 1400 around the world on the iHeartRadio app. My name is Rob Sanders. Thanks for joining me here on the program today. Special thanks to Will Palasczuk from WFNZ up in Charlotte, talking to us a little bit about the Carolina Panthers and their quarterback situation. Now that they have Sam Darnold, yeah, they're pretty much into the mix there as far as the quarterback that they've got, and he's not buying what the GM says. So they're going to pick someone else. So anyway, they're not going to get another quarterback. All right. So ESPN came out with their FPI. They released it today. And this is like they generally release it right after the first set of spring games. Now I know that Alabama has their spring game this weekend. South Carolina has their spring game this weekend. There's a list there of teams that still have to get their spring game in, but generally it's right after the first set of spring games. Their top 10. Now this is their computer simulation top 10, by the way. We'll give them to you as the top 10 first, and we'll look at some ACC and SEC teams. Number 1 is Alabama. No surprise there. Number 2 is Oklahoma. Number 3 is Clemson. Number 4 is the interesting one, is Iowa State. So if we went by the FPI projections for the college football playoff, your top 4 teams would be Alabama, Oklahoma, Clemson, and Iowa State. Now let's make sure that you LSU fans that'll call and you Georgia fans that will call, don't get upset with me. This is the projection from ESPN. Number 5 is Ohio State. Now, I know Ohio State's like, well, we beat Clemson last year, and that was our Super Bowl, and we should be automatically number 1 because Alabama does. I don't want to hear any of that either. You're at number 5 because of the projections, not because of me. Number 6 is Texas A&M. Number 7 is the Georgia Bulldogs. Number 8 is Mississippi State. Think about that for a minute. Number 9 is Oklahoma State, and number 10 is Penn State, a team that went 3-9 last season. But with the FPI projections, they've got them going at as the number 10 team in the country. Now, if we break it down by the conference, it's a little more, it's kind of what you would expect. And what I mean by that is that Alabama's at the top of the SEC. They project them to win 11 games, lose 1 game. So 11.1 wins, 1.6 losses. I don't know how that works. So there's that. After that, they've got Texas A&M. They project them to go 9 wins. They've got Georgia going 9-3. Now, I know that Bulldog fans are going to be just upset by that, but the reality is that they need to they got to think about this from this perspective. You're opening the season with a game where you are not favored. I've seen some of the opening lines out in Las Vegas, and Clemson's up favored in that game. I know that hurts feelings there, but 3 losses is not really that far-fetched for Georgia. Now, they could go 12-0, but 9 wins seems like if you're going to go the over and under, that seems about par for Georgia. Mississippi State at 8 wins. That's interesting. The Florida Gators with 8 wins. This is the same year Florida welcomes in Alabama, by the way, in week 3 of the season. They still got the Gators winning 8 games without Kyle Pitts, without Kyle Trask. We're going to see how that goes there. Also, Auburn. They've got Auburn winning 6.9 games, so we'll give them 7 for the Auburn Tigers there. LSU, they've got at 7.2 wins. So, people think that Ed Orgeron, he's got to right the ship this year, or he may not be there anymore. Just saying. Ole Miss is at 6.9 wins. We'll give them 7 because that's really close. Arkansas is at 6 wins. Mizzou is at 7 wins. Kentucky is at 7 wins. Tennessee is at 6.6 wins. Wow. If you round that up, they got the Vols winning close to 7 games. And they've got South Carolina at 4.5 wins. Vanderbilt at 4.2. So there is your SEC's FPI to start the season. The ones that I think are a little inflated, I'd have to go with, I think Mississippi State, maybe a little high at 8, maybe just a little high. I think there may be a 7-win team, but Ole Miss at 7. Some of the folks online, G Bama Boy says Bama should be at 10.5 instead of 11. They're young on offense. Yeah, but man, the talent that Alabama has is just, with Coach Saban there, I mean, it's just silly. Now you can make the argument, new offensive coordinator. You've also got the new quarterback. You got all these guys that left, all the guys at wide receiver. Yeah, there's a potential for Alabama to slip up. If you look at the Alabama schedule, I mean, week 3 is early. Maybe they don't have everything ironed out yet. They got to go to the swamp in week 3. Now, I'm not saying that Florida's a better team than Alabama. I'm not saying that. I do think Dan Mullen is a good coach, and I think that he can get the most out of the least, and he may have his guys riled up and ready to go. And could they beat Alabama? I mean, it's in the swamp. Why not? It's not that far-fetched. But then Florida could go 8-4 on the season. But Alabama could get bit early with that much young talent on the offense and trying to get themselves squared away as far as having the new offensive coordinator. Now, I do give Alabama credit for this. I think they start the season with Miami. So like in a 3-week stretch, they're going to play possibly the 2 best teams in the state of Florida. UCF fans are going to be upset with me for saying that, but yeah, they're going to play the 2 best teams in the state of Florida quickly at the very beginning, week 1 and week 3. Now, is De'Aaron King going to be back? Will he be somebody that could run around a little bit and cause Alabama problems? I don't know. I think to beat Alabama, you got to have a precision passing game. We'll talk about that more when we come back. We'll also give you the ACC's FPI right here in just a moment on the rundown, right here on Fox Sports Radio 1400. Yeah, I think the only way that you beat Alabama, in my opinion, is to go with getting them early. You're not going to have very many teams that are going to square up with them and just beat them like that. There's just too much talent, and Coach Saban's too good. You just have to be respectful of who you're playing. Beating Alabama is a big deal. They don't lose very many games. Clemson fans get upset when I say stuff like that because it's like, well, Clemson doesn't lose very many games either. Yeah, but Alabama's been doing it for a long time. Alabama doesn't really have a whole lot of, You got that one blowout loss to Clemson, but all the other games, even when they played LSU a couple of years ago, and LSU had Burrow and all that, I mean, Alabama was right in that game. I think that no, with Alabama, I think you need precision passing. You got to have a guy that's going to be able to line up and make that quick throw, make the quick slant and things like that, and has the ability to read it. I think that's a big thing with Alabama, in my opinion. So you can have a great defense, that doesn't matter. You can have a great offense, that doesn't matter. So you're right about the line of scrimmage. When Clemson beat Alabama, that's because they had the defensive line with Wilkins and Cleveland Farrell and Austin Bryant and all those guys was just too good. I mean, there was just too much talent there, to be honest with you. Welcome back to the rundown on Fox Sports Radio 1400 around the world in the iHeartRadio app. We were talking a little bit during the break about the how do you beat Alabama, and I was telling the folks watching live over there, which you can watch at foxsportsradio1400.com. Got to have that precision passing. Got to be able to take that line of scrimmage. A couple of other SEC notes. They've got Alabama as a 30% chance to win the national title, 50% chance to make the national championship game, 76% chance to make the playoffs, 51% chance to win the conference, 63% chance to win the division. So there's that. Interesting stuff there. All right, let's look at the ACC. When you ESPN put Notre Dame within the ACC, which is funny because Notre Dame is independent, because Notre Dame doesn't want to play in a conference, because they want TV money and they want people to watch them play Air Force and Navy and call those games rivals that the world needs to see, when in all actuality, Notre Dame just doesn't really want to play an all-conference schedule, regardless of where it's at. Now, I know Fighting Irish fans, they get upset and they're like, oh, it's just reality. Comes down to TV money and the fact that they can always be right in the top 10 playing. And it's nothing against the service academies, but let's be honest. The service academies generally are, you may have one that's a top 25 team every year, but they're not consistent powers in college football. It's just the way that it is. Anyway, they do put them in the ACC for these rankings here. Clemson at number 1, they project them to win 11.5 games. So percentage chance to win out is at 21%, and win the divisions at 89%, win the conference at 72%, playoff percentage is at 64%, make the national championship game, 32%, win the national championship, it's at 15%. There you go with that. Notre Dame, by the way, they project them to win 8 games. Same thing with North Carolina at 8 games. Miami, they've got them projected to win 7.9 games. So it's over almost right at 8 games. Virginia Tech, man, do they need a bounce back season, or Justin Fuente is going to be an offensive coordinator somewhere. They're at 7.7 wins. That Virginia Tech North Carolina matchup, I got to check the date on that. That's like must see TV if you're an ACC fan. That's like maybe one of the biggest games in the Coastal Chaos. That's what they call that division, Coastal Chaos over there. We'll see how that works out for them. Virginia's at 7 wins. NC State is at 6.8 wins. Resident NC State apologist and former host here on Fox Sports Radio, Jonathan Reynolds, thinks that NC State is going to be much better than 6.8 wins. I think Dave Doran is a dolt, and I don't think they're going to be worth anything, but that's just me. Wake Forest is at 7 wins. Now, they have a good coach. Winning 7 wins for them is not that far-fetched. Florida State, they have them right at 6 wins. Man, did you watch any of the Florida State spring game? They've got issues with kicker, man. Their kicker is terrible. They got to figure that out. Louisville's at 6.5 wins. Pitt's at 6.5 wins. Boston College is at 6 wins. I would take the over with Boston College. That's just my opinion. I think their head coach has got their head screwed on right. Georgia Tech at 5 wins. Duke at 4 wins. And Syracuse at 4 wins. So when I look at this, if I had to take some over-unders on this just by these rankings, I kind of like Louisville to win 7 games over 6. And I like Boston College to win more than 6 games. So there you go with that. Jordan Online says that Notre Dame TV deal isn't as advantageous anymore like it was when they first signed it. Yeah, but they basically have their own network. They're going to be on network television pretty much every Saturday. So, yeah, there's that. Otherwise, if it's not the TV deal and the money there, then what are they doing? What are they doing not joining a conference? And look, let's put this out there too. And I think I've said this before with Notre Dame. They need to join the Big Ten. That just makes the most sense. Put them in the Big Ten. Maryland should be in the ACC like they've always been. Kick Maryland out. Put Notre Dame in. Ta-da! I'll actually have the sound. There we go. I just fixed it. There you go. I don't understand why this is so complicated. Conference stuff is insane. G Bama Boy says Texas has their own channel that blows, and Notre Dame with the NBC deal is a joke. The case where you don't get your money's worth. Good point. Vandy makes more money in TV than the Notre Dame. Okay, Alan, thank you with that. RMF Tide says, I think Georgia Tech can get to 6. That's fair. You know, I was looking at Ole Miss's schedule, and they've got Ole Miss projected to win, what, 6 games? When you look at Ole Miss's schedule, their schedule is brutal. Look at it really quick here. I was looking at it the other day, and they have like one set here with, let me make sure I give you the exact run here. So as we look ahead to the 2021 season here for the Ole Miss Rebels, let's see here. They have like a 7-game stretch where it's going to be tough. They play Louisville, Austin Peay, and Tulane. Then they go, listen to this stretch, at Alabama, home for Arkansas, at Tennessee, home with LSU, at Auburn, and then they welcome in Liberty and Texas A&M. That 7-game stretch is brutal. I think it's 7 games. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah. Of that 7-game stretch, you can make the argument that the only true winnable game out of that 7 would be the Tennessee game. And that's no, I'm just saying, I think Liberty's going to be a top 25 team again this year. So, yeah, that schedule for Ole Miss is brutal when you step back and look at it. They wrap up the season with Vanderbilt, and then they go to Mississippi State. So when you look at that schedule, and then you look at ESPN's FPI, where Ole Miss is set to win, they've got them at 6.9 wins. Man, they're going to have to do really well, and that's a 7-game stretch there. I mean, and they got to play at Mississippi State with the Egg Bowl, too. That's always a tough game. And we've learned from the bowl game last year that the Pirate likes to let his guys fight. So they won the game and the fight afterwards in the bowl game. Anyway, we'll take calls this afternoon on the FPI at 803-978-1832, 803-978-1832. Ole Miss at 7 wins. I think that's a reach, to be honest with you. Especially, they open up the season. They should be favored in their first 3. And then after that, I mean, Arkansas is going to be tough. Playing at Alabama's the toughest game on their schedule. I think playing at Tennessee is probably the easiest in that stretch. Home for LSU, at Auburn, home for Liberty, home for Texas A&M. If they go through that schedule, and of those 7, if they could win 4 of them, that's a heck of a season there for them. Out to the phones we go. Welcome into the rundown. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Rob. It's Ray. How are you doing today?
Hey, buddy, what's up?
Oh, boy, I just heard the prediction, the FPI or whatever.
Yeah.
For the Gamecocks, 4.5 games.
4.5 games.
I don't know if wow. Ooh. Well, I tell you, Muschamp didn't leave us, he didn't leave the cabins full. Let's just say that. What is I don't know if you had the schedule pulled up, but I was trying to think what might be some of the games that, we have a decent shot at.
I think that in my opinion, and I'm pulling up the whole schedule right now.
Good.
In my opinion, I think that South Carolina's out of conference games are all winnable with the exception of Clemson. And I'm just looking at it from right here. Make sure I've got you the correct info here. Yeah, they open up the season with Eastern Illinois. Eastern Illinois won one game last year. I think the Gamecocks will blow them out big time. At East Carolina, that's another game that I think that they won't have too many problems with. They have Troy, which might be interesting, but the game's at home, so I give the Gamecocks that game. So I think that's 3 wins right there. And then Vanderbilt's in rebuild mode. Even when South Carolina is in when they're in rebuild mode, they still beat Vanderbilt. I mean, it's losing to Vanderbilt is just not something that I'm sure Shane Beamer wants to do in his first season. So I give the Gamecocks those 4. And, after that, you can I think that they beat, in my opinion, I think they can beat Tennessee, but that's just me. After that, the other games are tough. I mean, you've got Auburn at home. You've got to go to Mizzou, and a team that I think is going to possibly shock some folks this year because they've got a really good quarterback in Connor Badazalak, excuse me. So, yeah, I mean, but I like the non-conference games, and I like the win over Vanderbilt, and then Tennessee. If you told me I had to pick, I like those 5.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you there. It's gonna be really tough to get that 6th win and get bowl eligible. I think I really think that Beamer, I almost hate to say it, but it's just what it is, as they say. I think we're probably 2 to 3 years out from being bowl eligible, and I think we're probably 5 to 6 years out to being like a 7 to 9 win type of team. I think. I think, Coach Beamer's got his work cut out, but I think he's up for the challenge. And I just think as fans, we just got to look at it as, we're building. We are building, and we're building with somebody fresh, and it's not a retread. And that alone has got me a little bit excited.
Well, I think if you're a South Carolina fan, you should be excited because it's been going into each season the past 2 years has been like, oh, no, what is Muschamp going to do now? But, no, I mean, there's more optimism, but I wouldn't hang my hat on that too much. I mean, what was it? I think Mizzou won 8 games last year. Nobody really projected them to do that. Nobody expected LSU to be as sorry as they were last year. So, I mean, things could, and these are just computer simulations, by the way. Sometimes they're really close and sometimes they're not. So,
yeah, but it's amazing when Vegas comes out with their picks, I'm saying, man, they don't know what they're talking about, but my goodness,
generally the first week of the season,
they're so accurate a lot of times,
the first week of the season, Las Vegas is all over the place. And then after that, they're pretty close. They
really are. What's the old saying? They didn't build the strip on losing. So
that's
anyway,
true.
I'll let somebody get her. Thanks, Rob.
All right, man. Thanks a lot. Yeah. I mean, and I think that's just you can be an optimistic Gamecock fan and say, hey, 6 wins are out there. Yeah. I mean, it's not that far-fetched. You pull off an upset here or there. But I think that this season, Shane Beamer needs to be like Coach Spurrier was. Our goal this year is to win more than we lose and to make a bowl game. If you do that, you win 6 games this year. That's a heck of a coaching job. 803-978-1832. Take a quick break. When we come back, we'll wrap up the rundown this afternoon right here on Fox Sports Radio 1400. Yeah, Georgia's 3rd. I mean, Kirby Smart wears a woman's golf visor, by the way. Just saying. Stupid Kirby Smart. I don't know about the Pirate down at Ole Miss. I don't know. We'll see how that works out. Kentucky with 7 wins. That's an interesting pick there. Yeah, but that doesn't matter. I mean, I don't know. Ole Miss is going to have a hard time, man. That 7-game stretch where your easiest games are Tennessee and Liberty. Woof. You got to go to Tennessee. Would anybody be shocked if Ole Miss finished if they went 1-6? I wouldn't be shocked. It's not really that far-fetched, to be completely honest with you. You don't like Kentucky? See, that's the thing. Nobody wants to give Kentucky credit. Kentucky has a coach that has a system that he runs, and I think that Coach Stoops is one of the most underrated coaches in the SEC. Dead serious. Absolutely. If I were ranking coaches from the East, he would be in the top 2. He really would. Just saying. I like his system better than Kirby Smart's system. Kirby Smart just recruits. I'm just saying on that. I think that's a lot of the Gamecock fans because, for 5 years, what is it? 6 out of the past 7 years, Kentucky kind of beat you senseless. Is that what it was? And I think Gamecock fans are just like, oh, Kentucky can't beat us. Kentucky's a decent program. They are not hot dog water. So there's that, by the way. I like Eli Drinkowitz. Oh, gosh. Beamer's not number 1, Tom. You're hilarious. Jerome's right. Matt Corral, he can fling the ball. We'll give him that.
Listen to Win a Cool Grand, weekdays from 7 a.m. till 10 p.m. on Fox Sports Radio 1400.
Welcome back to the Rundown right here on Fox Sports Radio 1400 around the world on the iHeartRadio app. Kentucky at 7 wins. There were people that, who was it? Was it Tom online said, no way Kentucky gets to 7 wins. Why is it that Kentucky doesn't get the respect from folks? Coach Stoops is a guy that every year he doesn't have all of the top ranked talent, but he consistently puts out good teams. I mean, they do. This season, if you look at their schedule, they've got Louisiana Monroe. I think that's a win. Chattanooga's a win. I think they're going to be favored over South Carolina. That puts them at what? 1, 2, 3. They've got Tennessee. I think they're favored there. I think they're favored over Vanderbilt. I think they're favored over New Mexico State and Louisville. 7 wins is not that far-fetched for Kentucky. It's really not. I don't understand that how people can't look at what Coach Stoops does, and he takes basically a lot of kids that wanted to play in Big Ten schools but couldn't quite get there, and he molds them into a decent football team every year. I just don't understand why people don't respect Kentucky as much as they should. Same thing goes for Mizzou. Eli Drinkowitz is going to have that team. I think they're going to be a pretty good team this year. I really, really believe that. I know they lost Nick Bolton, their all-world linebacker, but when you look at their schedule, I don't think that that's going to be that far-fetched either that they win 7 games, which is what they're projected to do. Now, with that happening, with those teams getting the 7 wins, who's going to be in the bottom there? I mean, Vanderbilt, South Carolina, Kentucky. Vanderbilt, South Carolina, and Tennessee. Those 3 may end up chasing Kentucky and Mizzou right up there, trying to finish behind either Georgia or Florida. Blake says Stoops teams hit you in the mouth but never have a good quarterback. That's true. They don't have a good quarterback. Since Jared Lorenzen and Tim Couch, they really don't have a good quarterback. Yeah. So there's that. In the West, though, the more and more I look at Ole Miss and their schedule, I'm like, 7 wins might be tough there. Arkansas' schedule is not exactly the easiest either. But then again, when you're in the West and you've got to play Alabama, you've got to play LSU, and you've got to play Texas A&M, that's, a quarter of your schedule? That's going to be tough. That's why I don't really get upset with a lot of the SEC West folks when they talk about, we're playing an SEC schedule, because you're going to have at least 3 of your games that are going to be tough every year. Now, I do get on the kick of, I think they should schedule better non-conference stuff, but in the East, you could end up playing a schedule without having to play Alabama. You could play a schedule where your West opponents are, say, Arkansas and Ole Miss or what have you, and not really get a huge, tough SEC schedule. The biggest game on your schedule could be Georgia. Tom's talking about they have A&M every year. Stop the nonsense. South Carolina does not play a crazy SEC schedule every year. Stop believing that. Become a more educated fan. I mean, that's all I can say to you on that. Yes, you play Texas A&M every year. But do you have 2 other games? Do you play Alabama every year? No. You don't. You don't play LSU every year. Stop with that nonsense. Generally, the biggest game on the South Carolina schedule that is not Clemson is Georgia. It's not that far-fetched. Just saying. Stop thinking that you're playing just this monumental schedule every year. And that's for all the teams in the East. All right, don't forget, Lawton Swan of Clemson Sports Talk is up next. He is the czar of Clemson Sports.
Stop looking at me, Swan.
He will take you home this afternoon. Be sure to check out his program. He's at Clemson Sports on Twitter. You can follow him there. Also, his website is clemsonsportstalk.com. Gamecock fans, they listen to his show. I know they do. I'll be back at it tomorrow right here on Fox Sports Radio 1400. Appreciate you guys, man. We'll talk to you later on. You've not had the top 5. That's the beginning of the season. You are lying to yourself. Look at the end of the season. You didn't play that many top-ranked teams. You just played what the preseason stuff was. It's how the teams finish at the end of the season. You don't know what you're talking about, Tom. You're just sucking the SEC tit. That's what you're doing. Look at the end of the season and how many teams you played that were ranked. It's not that good. It's not that good. God, I can't believe people. Well, we played, these teams were all ranked in the top. That's because you have writers that are idiots that put teams in the top 25 that don't have any business being there. And, but we played this top schedule. No, you didn't. No, you really didn't. It's just absolute lies. Educate yourself, man. Look at the teams and how they're ranked at the end of the season, not the beginning of the season. Your ranked wins should be counted at the end of the season, not the beginning. The beginning of the season doesn't mean anything. It doesn't. God, I can't believe people think that way. Holy crap. Have a great day, guys.